The morning fog clung to Sunset Bay like a familiar blanket, but Marcus Rivera could already tell it would burn off by noon. 23 years of living on this stretch of California coastline had taught him to read the ocean's moods better than most people read faces. Today felt different though, charged with an energy he couldn't quite place. His daughter Sophie sat on the weathered wooden steps of Tower 7, methodically working her way through a stack of ocean fact cards he'd bought her for her 9th birthday last month. She'd become obsessed with marine biology since her mother died, as if understanding the science behind the waves could somehow make sense of the senseless. "Did you know that rip currents move faster than an Olympic swimmer?" Sophie announced, holding up a card featuring alarming statistics about ocean safety. Marcus finished checking the emergency oxygen tank and glanced down at her serious expression. "That's why we have rescue boards and training, kiddo. Knowledge is power, but preparation saves lives." The early morning beach patrol had revealed nothing unusual. No overnight parties leaving dangerous debris. No storm damage from yesterday's brief squall. Just the endless cycle of tides reshaping the sand and carrying away yesterday's footprints. Marcus had walked this same route every morning for 3 years, ever since the accident that changed everything and forced him to rebuild his life from scratch. Elena Chun's day had started at 4:30 with an emergency conference call to Hong Kong, followed by reviewing quarterly projections that would determine the fate of 3,000 employees. By 7, she was already exhausted from decisions that would ripple through international markets, yet she'd promised Dylan this beach day weeks ago. Her son had been patient with her impossible schedule, understanding in ways that broke her heart. The drive from San Francisco to Sunset Bay had taken exactly 93 minutes, including a stop for the sunscreen Dylan insisted they needed and the beach toys Elena hoped would make up for all the soccer games and school plays she'd missed. Her assistant had protested the unscheduled absence, reminding her about the board presentation that could make or break the Chen Industries merger. But some promises mattered more than profit margins. Dylan pressed his face against the passenger window as they descended the coastal highway, watching the Pacific Ocean expand before them like an endless blue promise. He'd seen pictures, of course, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer magnitude of water stretching beyond the horizon. His previous beach experiences had been limited to private clubs, where the sand felt sanitized and the waves seemed tame enough for corporate executives' comfort. "Mom, are there really sharks out there?" Dylan asked, his voice mixing excitement with just enough concern to make Elena's protective instincts flare. "There are lots of fish in the ocean," she replied carefully, "but the lifeguards know how to keep everyone safe. That's their job." Elena parked near the main entrance, noting the mix of vehicles from practical family sedans to beat-up trucks adorned with surfboard racks. This was exactly the authentic experience Dylan craved, though. It pushed every button in her security-conscious mind. No controlled environment, no predetermined outcomes. Just raw, unpredictable nature and her precious son's desire to experience something real. Marcus watched the black Mercedes pull into the lot with mild interest. Expensive cars weren't uncommon during summer tourist season, but something about this particular arrival caught his attention. Maybe it was the way the woman emerged with such obvious purpose, or how the small boy beside her vibrated with barely contained energy. The pair approached the beach like explorers entering uncharted territory. The woman's movements suggested someone accustomed to controlling every variable, while her son displayed the fearless curiosity that made Marcus automatically calculate rescue response times. 7 years of lifeguarding had developed his instincts for identifying potential problems before they became emergencies. Sophie abandoned her fact cards to study the newcomers with anthropological interest. "City people," she diagnosed with authority. "Look how she's carrying that bag like it might explode." Elena struggled with the oversized beach bag Dylan had insisted they needed, along with chairs that seemed designed to frustrate anyone lacking an engineering degree. Every few steps, she glanced toward the Lifeguard tower where a tall figure in red shorts was organizing equipment with military precision. Something about his competent movements reassured her, though she couldn't shake the feeling that bringing Dylan here was either the best or worst decision she'd made all year. The morning sun climbed higher, burning through the marine layer and revealing a perfect California beach day. Families began claiming prime spots with colorful umbrellas and elaborate camps. Parents chased toddlers away from the water while older kids tested boundaries with typical summer fearlessness. Dylan had never seen so many children playing freely in one place. At his private school, every activity was supervised and structured. Here, kids built elaborate sand cities without adult intervention, played games that seemed to evolve minute by minute, and approached the waves with casual confidence that both amazed and worried him. "Can I go swimming now?" he asked for the third time in 10 minutes. Elena surveyed the ocean, noting how the waves seemed larger and more powerful than she'd expected. "Let's walk down to the water first. See how it feels." Marcus tracked their progress automatically, his trained eye cataloging details, mother clearly uncomfortable with beach environment, child displaying classic signs of inexperience combined with excessive enthusiasm. Weather conditions excellent but with moderate surf that could challenge weak swimmers. Standard Tuesday morning scenario requiring elevated attention. What he couldn't see was how this routine observation would soon explode into something that would connect his family's tragedy to secrets Elena Chun had never known existed. How the rescue he was about to perform would unlock questions that had haunted him for 3 years and reveal that some coincidences are actually destiny in disguise. The stage was set, the players had taken their positions, and somewhere in the vast Pacific, currents were shifting in ways that would change 4 lives forever. Sophie Rivera possessed the kind of intuitive understanding about people that most adults spent decades trying to develop. At 9 years old, she could sense emotional undercurrents with startling accuracy, a skill that had emerged gradually since her mother's death 3 years earlier. Grief had taught her to read the subtle signs of pain in others, to recognize when someone was carrying burdens too heavy for their shoulders. Watching the woman and boy from the expensive car struggle with their beach setup, Sophie felt a familiar tug of recognition. The mother's movements carried this same tight control her father displayed when he was fighting not to think about mom. The child's enthusiasm was genuine, but underneath it, Sophie detected something else, a hunger for normalcy that she understood all too well. "Dad, I think they need help," Sophie announced, already gathering her collection of shells and sea glass from the morning's expedition. Marcus glanced toward the Chen family's increasingly chaotic attempt to establish their beach camp. Elena had managed to deploy 1 chair successfully, but the second one seemed designed to defeat anyone lacking advanced engineering credentials. Dylan bounced around the perimeter of their claimed territory, clearly itching to explore, but obviously trained to wait for permission. "They'll figure it out," Marcus replied, though his professional instincts were already engaged. Something about the family's dynamic suggested this beach visit was more significant than typical vacation fun. The mother's hypervigilance, combined with the child's carefully contained excitement, created exactly the kind of emotional pressure that led to poor decisions around water safety. Sophie, however, had already made her decision. With the fearless social confidence that children possess before the world teaches them about barriers and boundaries, she marched across the sand toward the struggling family. Her pockets bulged with treasures collected during the morning's exploration, and her face wore the serious expression she reserved for important missions. "Excuse me," Sophie called out as she approached, causing both Elena and Dylan to look up from their battle with the rebellious beach chair. "I think you're doing it backward." Elena's first instinct was polite dismissal. She'd spent years deflecting, Well-meaning strangers who felt compelled to offer unsolicited advice about everything from parenting to corporate strategy. But something about this girl's direct approach, combined with Dylan's immediate fascination, made her pause. Backward how? Elena asked, genuinely curious despite herself. Sophie gestured toward the chair with authority that belied her age. The armrests have to click into place first, then you pull the back part up. My dad taught me because sometimes the beach patrol has to help people with their stuff. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The simple explanation, delivered without condescension, solved Elena's 15-minute struggle in 30 seconds. The chair snapped into proper formation with satisfying efficiency, and Dylan applauded as though he'd witnessed a magic trick. That's amazing, Dylan breathed, studying Sophie with newfound respect. How did you know that? I live here, Sophie explained matter-of-factly. Well, not exactly here on the beach, but close enough. My dad's the lifeguard in that tower. She pointed toward Marcus, who was pretending not to watch their interaction while obviously tracking every movement. Elena followed Sophie's gesture, getting her first clear look at the man who would soon save her son's life. From a distance, she noted his competent posture, the way he scanned the water with professional attention, the careful maintenance of his equipment. Everything about his bearing suggested experience and reliability, exactly what she needed to feel secure about Dylan's beach adventure. Is being a lifeguard fun? Dylan asked, his voice carrying the kind of career curiosity that made Elena's heart ache. Her son asked such questions with increasing frequency, searching for role models beyond the corporate executives who dominated their social circle. Sophie considered this seriously, her expression thoughtful. It's not exactly fun like a game. It's fun. It's more like important fun. My dad says he gets to help people have good days at the beach, but he also has to be ready for when things go wrong. Like being a superhero, except instead of fighting bad guys, he fights dangerous water. The analogy resonated with Dylan in ways that surprised Elena. Her son had always been drawn to stories about heroes and protection, themes that took on new significance given the family secrets he couldn't possibly understand. His father's corporation had been built on the principle of protecting people through innovative safety technology, though recent revelations had complicated that legacy considerably. Does your dad ever get scared? Dylan asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Sophie's answer came without hesitation. Everybody gets scared sometimes. But being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. My mom taught me that before she died. The matter-of-fact delivery of such profound loss caught Elena completely off guard. Her carefully constructed responses to childhood questions about difficult topics suddenly seemed inadequate compared to this girl's straightforward honesty. Dylan's eyes widened with curiosity rather than discomfort, as though he'd found someone who understood something important about the world. I'm sorry your mom died, Dylan said with the solemn sincerity children bring to life's biggest truths. Thank you, Sophie replied simply. She was really good at helping people, like my dad is now. Sometimes I think maybe that's why he became a lifeguard, because she can't help people anymore, so he does it for both of them. Elena felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition of grief processed with wisdom beyond Sophie's years. This child had clearly thought deeply about loss and meaning, finding ways to understand tragedy that honored both pain and purpose. It was exactly the kind of emotional intelligence Elena struggled to model for Dylan when their own family complications arose. Would you like to see what I found this morning? Sophie asked, already reaching into her pockets. The ocean gives you different presents every day if you know how to look. She produced a collection of sea glass worn smooth by countless tides, shells in various stages of completeness, and several interesting stones shaped by waves into natural sculptures. Each item came with a brief explanation about where she'd discovered it and what made it special. Dylan listened with rapt attention, clearly enchanted by this catalog of treasures that required no money to obtain. "This one's my favorite today," Sophie said, holding up a piece of blue-green sea glass that caught the sunlight like a tiny window. "It's probably from a bottle that someone threw away a long time ago, but the ocean made it beautiful instead of trash. Sometimes broken things become the prettiest." The observation struck Elena with unexpected force. She thought about her own family's broken pieces, the secrets and lies that had transformed their pristine corporate image into something much more complicated. Could beauty emerge from their destruction too, or would the revelations she'd been uncovering simply create more damage? Dylan held the sea glass up to the light, studying it with scientific interest. "How long does it take for the ocean to make glass this smooth?" "Years and years," Sophie explained. "My dad says the ocean is very patient. It doesn't rush anything. It just keeps working on things until they're ready to be found." Elena wondered if patience was a quality she'd ever truly mastered. Her entire career had been built on aggressive timelines and decisive action. The idea of allowing time and natural forces to slowly transform difficult situations into something beautiful challenged everything she thought she knew about problem solving. "Sophie," Marcus called from the Lifeguard tower, his voice carrying clearly across the sand. "Remember what we talked about regarding bothering the tourists?" "I'm not bothering them, Dad," Sophie called back. "I'm helping them with their chair and showing Dylan my collections. It's called being neighborly." Marcus couldn't argue with that logic, though he remained alert to the family's needs and potential complications. Elena Chun struck him as someone carrying significant stress, and stressed parents often made poor decisions about water safety. The child seemed well-behaved but inexperienced, exactly the combination that required extra vigilance. "Your dad seems really nice," Elena said, genuinely impressed by the balance Marcus maintained between supervision and allowing Sophie independence. "He is nice," Sophie agreed. "But he's also really careful about safety stuff because of what happened to my mom. She died in an accident at work, so now he worries about accidents happening to other people too." The simple explanation contained layers of meaning that Elena couldn't fully process. She found herself wondering about the circumstances that had led this family to their current life, about the choices and tragedies that had shaped them. There was clearly more to their story than tourist small talk could reveal. "What kind of work did your mom do?" Dylan asked, his natural curiosity overriding the social conventions Elena usually tried to maintain. "She was an environmental scientist," Sophie said with obvious pride. "She studied ways to clean up pollution and make air and water safer for everyone. She was really smart about chemistry and stuff like that." Elena's breath caught slightly. Environmental science had been one of her own interests before corporate demands consumed her attention. The idea that Dylan might be talking to the daughter of someone who'd dedicated her life to protecting the environment felt like more than coincidence. "That sounds like really important work," Elena managed, though her mind was already racing through implications she couldn't quite grasp. "It was," Sophie nodded seriously. "Dad says she would have found ways to fix lots of problems if she'd had more time. Sometimes I think about studying the same things when I grow up, so I can finish some of the work she started." The conversation was interrupted by Dylan's sudden sprint toward the water's edge. Elena's heart jumped as she watched her son charge into the surf with typical 7-year-old fearlessness, completely forgetting every water safety lecture she'd attempted during the drive to Sunset Bay. "Dylan, wait," Elena called, but her son was already knee-deep in the waves, laughing with pure joy as the cold Pacific water swirled around his legs. Sophie immediately positioned herself between Elena and the water, her expression shifting to serious concern. "The current's pretty strong today," she said with authority. Dad always says to test the water slowly before going in deep. Elena felt panic beginning to rise as Dylan ventured further from shore, seemingly oblivious to the increasing power of the waves around him. She had no experience reading ocean conditions, no framework for understanding when normal childhood. Play crossed into dangerous territory. "Should I call your dad?" Elena asked, struggling to keep alarm from her voice. Sophie was already moving toward the water's edge, her practiced eye tracking Dylan's position relative to the current pattern she'd learned to recognize. "Not yet," she said calmly. "But maybe we should walk down there so we can talk to him." Easier. What Elena couldn't see from her position on the sand was how the morning's shifting tides had created exactly the kind of dangerous current that had caught 3 swimmers earlier that summer. Dylan's enthusiasm was carrying him directly into water that would soon be beyond his swimming ability, toward a riptide that could pull him out to sea faster than any rescue swimmer could follow. Sophie saw it, though. Her 3 years of daily beach observation had taught her to read the ocean's moods as clearly as her father did. The subtle change in wave patterns, the way the water pulled differently around Dylan's small body, the deceptive calm that often preceded the most dangerous situations. "Dylan," she called out, her young voice carrying surprising authority. "Come back toward shore right now. The water's getting too rough." But Dylan was too enchanted by his first real ocean experience to pay attention to warnings from a girl he'd just met. The waves felt powerful and exciting, nothing like the controlled pools he was used to. This was adventure, freedom, the authentic experience his mother had promised him. Marcus Rivera's transformation from corporate security consultant to small-town lifeguard hadn't happened overnight. The journey involved 18 months of grief counseling, 6 months of intensive water rescue training, and countless sleepless nights questioning whether he was running away from his problems or toward a solution. 3 years later, watching Sophie demonstrate wisdom beyond her years while helping strangers navigate their beach setup, he knew he'd made the right choice. The man who now scanned Sunset Bay's waters with practiced vigilance bore little resemblance to the polished professional who'd once managed million-dollar security contracts for Northern California's tech elite. That version of Marcus had worn expensive suits, carried the latest smartphone models, and measured success in quarterly profit margins. He'd spoken fluently about risk assessment and threat mitigation, skills that translated surprisingly well to ocean rescue, but required complete recontextualization. Carmen's death had shattered more than just their family structure. It had exposed the fundamental hollowness of Marcus's previous priorities, the way he'd mistaken busy achievement for meaningful purpose. The irony wasn't lost on him that his wife's environmental research had been focused on protecting communities from exactly the kind of corporate negligence that eventually killed her. She'd dedicated her career to preventing tragedies while he'd spent his time protecting the wealth of people who sometimes caused them. The transition hadn't been smooth. Former colleagues couldn't understand why Marcus would abandon a lucrative career to become what they privately considered a glorified pool attendant. His in-laws had been even less supportive, suggesting that his career change was just another example of the poor judgment that had prevented him from saving Carmen when it mattered most. Their criticism cut deep because part of him wondered if they were right. Sophie had been his anchor during those dark months. Her resilience in the face of losing her mother at age 6 had humbled him daily. While he struggled with rage and regret, she'd somehow found ways to honor Carmen's memory that focused on helping rather than punishing. Her natural empathy toward other people's struggles had taught him more about healing than any therapist ever managed. The financial sacrifice had been significant. Marcus's security consulting business had generated enough income to afford private schools, family vacations, and the kind of comfortable middle-class lifestyle that insulated them from most economic worries. The lifeguard's salary barely covered their basic needs: forcing them into a tiny apartment and requiring careful budgeting for everything from Sophie's school supplies to their monthly grocery bills. Yet somehow they'd found richness and simplicity that had been missing from their previous abundance. Daily walks on the beach replaced expensive entertainment. Sophie's scientific curiosity about marine ecosystems cost nothing, but provided endless fascination. Their evening conversations about ocean conservation and environmental protection connected them to Carmen's legacy in ways that felt meaningful rather than painful. Marcus had discovered unexpected satisfaction in physical work that produced clear, immediate results. Unlike the abstract nature of security consulting, where success was measured by problems that didn't occur, lifeguarding offered tangible victories. Every successful rescue, every prevented accident, every family that went home safely represented achievement he could see and feel. The work demanded constant attention and quick decision-making, qualities that left little mental energy for dwelling on regrets. The technical aspects of water rescue had challenged him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Understanding ocean currents, weather patterns, and human behavior in emergency situations required studying meteorology, physics, and psychology simultaneously. He'd approached the training with the same methodical intensity he'd once applied to corporate security assessments, though the stakes felt more personal now. Sophie's natural comfort around water had accelerated his learning curve. She'd inherited Carmen's fearless curiosity about natural systems, spending hours observing wave patterns, tidal changes, and marine life behavior. Her questions forced Marcus to research topics he might have overlooked, creating an unofficial education that supplemented his formal training. Together, they'd become students of the ocean's complex personality. The first successful rescue had validated Marcus's career change in ways he couldn't have predicted. A teenage tourist caught in a riptide, panic overwhelming his swimming ability, pulled to safety by Marcus's quick response and steady technique. The gratitude in the boy's parents' eyes, the knowledge that his intervention had prevented a family tragedy, had felt more meaningful than any corporate bonus he'd ever received. That rescue had also taught him about the psychological aftermath of water emergencies. The teenager's recovery involved not just physical safety, but emotional processing of what had happened. Marcus had spent time with the family afterward, helping them understand riptide formation and discussing strategies for safer ocean enjoyment. The educational component of his job proved as important as the rescue techniques. Sophie's role in these situations had evolved naturally. Her ability to communicate with distressed children often proved more effective than adult intervention. Kids responded to her honest explanations about ocean safety, her matter-of-fact approach to discussing danger, and her obvious competence despite her age. She'd become an unofficial junior educator, helping other children understand why certain rules existed and how to enjoy the beach responsibly. The morning Dylan Chun entered their lives, Marcus was tracking multiple potential concerns across his section of beach. A group of teenagers testing boundaries in deeper water, a toddler whose parents seemed more interested in their phones than their child's whereabouts, and now this obviously inexperienced family with the energetic boy and hyper-vigilant mother. His experience had taught him that multiple small risks often combined into major emergencies when people's attention was divided. Sophie's immediate connection with the Chun family had impressed him. Her social confidence around adults reflected lessons Carmen had taught about treating everyone with dignity, regardless of age or social status. The environmental scientist in Carmen had believed that meaningful change required community building across traditional boundaries. Sophie's willingness to help strangers suggested those values had taken root, despite losing her mother so young. Watching Elena Chun struggle with basic beach equipment while maintaining careful control over every variable, Marcus recognized someone fighting battles that extended far beyond vacation logistics. Her expensive clothes and obvious unfamiliarity with public beaches suggested wealth, but her tense body language indicated stress levels that money hadn't resolved. He'd seen similar patterns among his former corporate clients, successful people, whose achievements came at significant personal cost. Dylan's enthusiasm reminded Marcus of Sophie at that age, though with less ocean awareness and more sheltered eagerness. The child clearly craved adventure and normalcy in equal measure, suggesting a life heavily structured by adult concerns. His immediate fascination with Sophie's beach expertise indicated hunger for the kind of freedom that came from understanding rather than avoiding natural forces. The conversation between the children had revealed layers of Sophie's emotional development that Marcus sometimes missed in daily interaction. Her ability to discuss Carmen's death without bitterness, her understanding of grief as something that could coexist with purpose, her capacity to find meaning in tragedy, all demonstrated resilience that amazed him regularly. She'd somehow internalized lessons about healing that many adults never learned. Dylan's questions about fear and bravery had elicited responses from Sophie that revealed her sophisticated thinking about complex emotions. Her explanation that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but action despite fear reflected conversations she and Marcus had shared during difficult nights when missing Carmen felt overwhelming. Those discussions had helped them both understand that honoring the dead required continuing to live fully rather than simply surviving safely. The environmental science connection between Carmen's work and Dylan's curiosity felt significant, though Marcus couldn't articulate why. Sophie's pride in her mother's research had always included hope that someone would continue the important work Carmen hadn't finished. Meeting a child whose questions suggested similar interests created possibilities for mentorship that might benefit both families. Marcus had learned to trust Sophie's instincts about people. Her emotional intelligence often detected undercurrents that his analytical approach missed. Her immediate assessment that the Chun family needed help had proven accurate, though he suspected their needs extended beyond beach chair assembly. Something about Elena's careful control and Dylan's contained excitement suggested complications that wouldn't be resolved by simple assistance. The morning's routine had been disrupted in ways that felt significant, though Marcus couldn't yet see the full pattern. Sophie's engagement with strangers, Elena's obvious struggle to provide normalcy for her son, Dylan's hunger for authentic adventure, all suggested convergence of needs that might benefit from their involvement. His instincts as both father and lifeguard indicated that this encounter would extend beyond casual beach interaction. The technical aspects of ocean safety that Sophie had shared with Dylan represented years of accumulated knowledge. Her understanding of current patterns, wave formation, and danger recognition had developed through daily observation and Marcus's patient teaching. She'd become genuinely expert in ways that most beachgoers never achieved, skills that could literally save lives when properly applied. Dylan's sprint toward the water had triggered every alarm in Marcus's professional awareness. The child's obvious inexperience combined with his enthusiastic fearlessness created exactly the scenario that led to emergency situations. Sophie's immediate recognition of the danger, her positioning to assist Elena, her calm assessment of whether intervention was needed, all demonstrated the depth of her training and natural ability. The riptide that was beginning to form around Dylan's position represented the kind of ocean condition that separated experienced rescuers from well-meaning amateurs. Marcus could see the subtle current changes that weren't yet visible to untrained observers. The deceptive calm that often preceded the most dangerous water situations. The way apparently manageable waves could suddenly transform into life-threatening forces. Elena's panic was building in ways that could complicate any necessary rescue. Stressed parents often made poor decisions during water emergencies, either freezing completely or attempting interventions that endangered both themselves and their children. Marcus's training included techniques for managing family members during rescue operations, though every situation required adaptive response based on specific circumstances. Sophie's role as intermediary between the adults and the developing. Crisis showcased abilities that extended far beyond her years. Her capacity to remain calm under pressure, assess risks accurately, and communicate effectively with both children and adults reflected training that most professional responders would envy. She'd become a true partner in Marcus's lifeguarding responsibilities. Time fractured into crystalline segments as Dylan disappeared beneath the surface. Marcus launched himself from the tower with precision born from countless hours of training. His rescue board slicing through the surf as Alana's scream pierced the morning air. The riptide had claimed Dylan faster than anyone could have predicted, pulling the 7-year-old beyond the point where his limited swimming ability could save him. Sophie stood frozen at the water's edge, her usual confidence shattered by the speed of the unfolding catastrophe. She'd seen her father perform rescues before, but watching someone her own age struggle against forces beyond their control triggered memories of helplessness she'd tried to forget. The ocean that had always seemed manageable suddenly revealed its true power, indifferent to human wishes or careful planning. Marcus reached Dylan just as the boy's head disappeared for the second time. The rescue itself was textbook perfect, a testament to hundreds of hours practicing in conditions ranging from calm to life-threatening. He secured Dylan against the rescue board, cleared his airway, and began the careful journey back to shore, while monitoring vital signs with professional detachment that masked his own racing heart. Alina waded into the water without regard for her expensive clothes or personal safety, maternal instinct overriding every rational consideration. Sophie grabbed her arm with surprising strength, preventing her from entering the dangerous current. That would have created a second victim requiring rescue. "Let my dad handle it," Sophie said firmly, though her own voice trembled with emotion. "Going out there will just make it harder for him to save Dylan." The words cut through Elena's panic with surgical precision. She stopped fighting Sophie's grip and focused on the distant figures of Marcus and her son, willing them both to safety through sheer force of maternal desperation. Around them, other beachgoers had noticed the emergency, creating a growing circle of concerned observers who maintained respectful distance while offering silent support. Marcus's return to shore felt simultaneously eternal and instantaneous. Dylan was conscious but shaken, coughing up seawater while clinging to the rescue board with white-knuckled determination. His eyes searched frantically for his mother, fear and confusion written across his small face in ways that would haunt Elena's dreams for months to come. The medical assessment was thorough but reassuring. Dylan had ingested minimal seawater and showed no signs of secondary drowning or serious injury. His rescue had been completed quickly enough to prevent lasting physical trauma, though the psychological impact would require more time to fully understand. Marcus wrapped the boy in emergency blankets while checking his responses to basic questions designed to assess cognitive function. Elena's relief manifested as uncontrollable shaking that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. She held Dylan against her chest while tears streamed down her face, overwhelmed by how quickly their perfect beach day had transformed into potential tragedy. The what-if scenarios played endlessly in her mind, each one more terrifying than the last, each one emphasizing how unprepared she'd been for real danger. "Thank you," she whispered to Marcus, the words completely inadequate for the magnitude of what he'd just accomplished. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Marcus's response was characteristically modest. "It's what I'm here for." Dylan's a strong swimmer for his age. He just got caught by conditions that would challenge much more experienced people. The understatement was typical of his personality, but Sophie felt compelled to provide more context. "That riptide has pulled in 3 people this summer already. Dad had to rescue 2 adults last month who thought they could handle it because they were good pool swimmers." Elena looked between father and daughter, beginning to understand that the man who'd saved her son's life possessed skills and experience far beyond what she'd initially recognized. Marcus's calm professionalism during the emergency, combined with Sophie's sophisticated understanding of ocean dynamics, suggested a level of expertise that commanded genuine respect. The beach slowly returned to normal as other families resumed their activities, though many continued glancing toward the Chen group with sympathetic concern. Dylan recovered his composure gradually, his natural resilience asserting itself as the immediate shock faded. Within 20 minutes, he was asking technical questions about riptide formation with the same curiosity that had initially attracted him to the ocean. "How did you know exactly where to find me?" Dylan asked Marcus, his scientific mind already working to understand the mechanics of his rescue. Marcus sat beside them on the sand, his professional demeanor softening into educational mode. Ocean currents follow predictable patterns if you know how to read them. The riptide that caught you moves in a specific direction based on the tide, the wind, and the shape of the seafloor. Once I saw where you went in, I could calculate where you'd likely emerge. Sophie added her own expertise to the explanation. Dad taught me to watch for the warning signs. The water was pulling differently today because of the morning tide change. I should have warned you more clearly about staying closer to shore. Elena noticed the guilt in Sophie's voice and intervened. Gently, "You did warn him, sweetie." Dylan got excited and didn't listen carefully enough. "That's not your responsibility." The interaction revealed layers of Elena's character that impressed Marcus despite their brief acquaintance. Her ability to absolve Sophie of misplaced guilt while acknowledging Dylan's role in the incident demonstrated emotional intelligence and fairness under pressure. These weren't qualities he automatically associated with wealthy executives, though. He reminded himself that his assumptions might be unfairly influenced by negative experiences with his former corporate clients. Dylan's recovery included determined plans to become a better swimmer and learn proper ocean safety. His brush with danger had intensified rather than diminished his fascination with marine environments, a response that reminded Marcus strongly of Sophie's reaction to challenges. Both children seemed to possess the kind of resilience that transformed frightening experiences into learning opportunities. "Could you teach me about reading currents?" Dylan asked Sophie with genuine eagerness. "I want to understand how the ocean works so this doesn't happen again." Sophie's face brightened with purpose. "I have books and charts back at our apartment. Dad got them for me when I started getting really interested in marine science. We could show you all the different ways water moves and why some areas are more dangerous than others." Elena found herself agreeing to the educational session before fully considering the implications. Something about Sophie's earnest desire to share knowledge, combined with Marcus's obvious expertise, made the offer feel valuable rather than intrusive. Dylan's enthusiasm for learning from his near disaster suggested that positive connections might emerge from the morning's trauma. The walk to Marcus and Sophie's apartment revealed more about their circumstances than casual beach interaction had disclosed. Their building was older but well-maintained, clearly designed for working families rather than tourists or retirees. The neighborhood had a comfortable, lived-in quality that spoke of genuine community rather than temporary vacation accommodation. Their apartment itself was small but thoughtfully organized. Sophie's marine biology books occupied prominent shelf space alongside Marcus's professional training materials and certification documents. Elena noticed framed photographs of a woman who shared Sophie's intelligent eyes and warm smile, images that had been carefully positioned to maintain Carmen's presence without overwhelming the living space with grief. "That's my mom, Sophie," explained when she caught Elena studying the photographs. "She was an environmental scientist before she died. She taught me most of what I know about how pollution affects ocean ecosystems and why protecting water quality is so important for everyone." Elena's breath caught as she absorbed this information. Environmental science had been her own undergraduate focus before business school redirected her toward corporate management. Carmen's research area felt personally significant in ways she couldn't immediately articulate, especially given the current complications surrounding Chen Industries' environmental practices. Dylan was fascinated by Sophie's collection of marine specimens and scientific equipment. Her bedroom doubled as a laboratory where she conducted age-appropriate experiments on water quality, salinity levels, and the effects of various pollutants on aquatic life. The sophistication of her setup impressed Elena, who recognized genuine scientific curiosity when she encountered it. "Mom started teaching me about water chemistry when I was really little," Sophie explained while demonstrating a simple pH testing kit. She said that understanding how things work is the first step toward fixing problems. "After she died, Dad helped me keep learning because he thought she would want me to continue her work." Marcus watched Elena's reaction to Sophie's explanations with growing interest. Her questions demonstrated knowledge that went beyond casual environmental awareness, suggesting either professional background or serious personal interest in ecological issues. Her engagement with Sophie's projects seemed genuine rather than politely feigned, creating educational dialogue that benefited both participants. The afternoon extended into early evening as Dylan absorbed Sophie's patient instruction in ocean safety, marine biology, and environmental protection. Elena found herself drawn into conversations with Marcus about coastal conservation, water quality monitoring, and the complex relationships between human activity and marine ecosystem health. His knowledge extended far beyond basic lifeguard training, indicating either extensive self-education or formal background he hadn't mentioned. Carmen's research focused on industrial contamination of groundwater systems, Marcus explained. When Elena asked about his environmental knowledge, "After she died, I needed to understand her work better. It helped me feel connected to what she'd been trying to accomplish, and it gave Sophie scientific context for her mother's importance." Elena felt a chill of recognition that had nothing to do with the evening ocean breeze. Industrial groundwater contamination was exactly the issue currently threatening to destroy Chen Industries' reputation and her own career. The coincidence seemed too significant to ignore, though she couldn't yet see the full pattern of connections. What kind of industrial contamination was she studying? Elena asked, trying to keep her voice casual despite growing apprehension. Marcus hesitated, clearly debating how much detail to share with someone he'd known for less than 12 hours. She was investigating chemical discharge from manufacturing facilities that were falsifying their environmental reports. The contamination was causing serious health problems in communities downstream from the pollution sources. Elena's hands went cold as the implications crystallized. "Do you remember which manufacturing facilities she was investigating?" The direct question surprised Marcus, who hadn't expected such specific interest from a wealthy tourist. Elena's intensity suggested personal rather than academic curiosity, though he couldn't imagine how industrial contamination could affect someone in her obvious social position. Chen Industries was one of the primary companies her research team was investigating, Marcus said carefully. They were part of a larger pattern of corporate environmental violations that Carmen was documenting when she died. Elena felt the world shift beneath her feet as the final connection snapped into place. The environmental scientist who'd been investigating her father's company, the woman whose research had led to industrial safety reforms, the dedicated professional who died in a workplace accident, was the wife and mother of the people who just saved her son's life. Sophie continued explaining water quality testing procedures to Dylan, oblivious to the adult conversation that was rewriting both families' understanding of their shared history. Marcus watched Elena's face cycle through shock, recognition, and something that looked like guilt, though he couldn't understand what she might feel guilty about in relation to Carmen's research. "Elena," Marcus said gently, "are you connected to Chen Industries somehow?" The question hung in the air between them, carrying implications that would reshape everything they thought they knew about coincidence, justice, and the interconnectedness of human lives. Elena looked at Dylan, absorbed in scientific discovery with the daughter of a woman her family's company had failed to protect, and felt the weight of secrets she could no longer bear alone. Robert Chun was my father, Elena said quietly. I'm the current CEO of Chen Industries. I've been investigating the same environmental violations that Carmen was researching when she died. The contamination, the falsified reports, the cover-ups. Everything she was trying to expose is what I've been fighting to correct from inside the company. Marcus stared at her, processing information that recontextualized every interaction they'd shared. The woman whose son he'd just saved was the daughter of the man whose company had killed his wife. The wealthy tourist he'd judged as inexperienced and sheltered was actually fighting the same battles Carmen had died trying to win. Sophie looked up from her demonstration, sensing the sudden tension between the adults. Is everything okay? She asked with the perceptive concern that had become her specialty. Elena knelt beside Sophie, her voice steady despite the emotional earthquake occurring inside her chest. Your mother's research was incredibly important. She was trying to protect communities from exactly the kind of pollution that my father's company was hiding. I've been working to finish what she started, to make sure the truth comes out and that the contamination gets cleaned up properly. Sophie's eyes widened as she processed this revelation. You're continuing my mom's work? I'm trying to, Elena said honestly. It's complicated because it's my own family's company, but yes, I believe she was right about everything, and I want to make sure her research leads to real changes that protect people and the environment. Dylan looked between the adults, sensing significance he couldn't fully understand. Does this mean we're connected somehow? Like, were our families supposed to meet? Marcus and Elena exchanged glances across their children's heads, both thinking about the series of seemingly random events that had brought them together. A lost keycard, a drowning rescue, a chance conversation about environmental science, all leading to revelations that felt more like destiny than coincidence. Sometimes, Marcus said carefully, life connects people in ways that help them heal old wounds and create something better together.